I've just seen brutalized, and it's very sad, very heartbreaking. I got to tell you what happened this year in the General Assembly, because I'm just like, I feel like my feet are in cement. So they put a bill out this year, and this bill said that if there was an open CPS investigation and a parent changed a child's school enrollment, that the parent could go to jail. Now, this is not a parent who's been found to be neglectful. This is not a parent who's been charged with any crime. This is not a parent in which there's, you know, I mean, when you, and I had a criminal law background before I became a family law attorney. I mean, you know, and a lot of times I look at the criminal law aspect, because I say all the time, criminals have more rights than families do. You know, if the police officers were going to come to your house and search your house, they have to get a search warrant, and they have to have an affidavit, and somebody has to swear to the facts in that affidavit, and then they have to take that affidavit to a judicial officer, who then gives them permission to search for specific things, okay? They have to say, I mean, of course they make it pretty broad these days, but they have to say they're suspected of drugs, or they're suspected of porn or something, so that they have a target. So what DCS does routinely is if they get a referral, and there are some 35,000 anonymous referrals a year that can come from anybody, they come and knock on your door and say, I'm here with DCS, and can I come in? Now, a lot of very unsuspecting people say yes, but a lot of people are now saying no, but they want to inspect your house, they want to talk to your children in private, they want you to take a pee in a cup, okay? So, and if you don't do it, then they go to court and they do one of two things. They either file a petition to take your kid away and say they would not cooperate with the investigation. Not one fact is supported, and they can get an ex parte order behind your back and take your kids, or they get an order compelling you to cooperate with an investigation. So, I mean, in no other place, if you're charged with a crime, if you're charged with stealing a car and Detective John calls you up and says, you know, come down, would you like to come down and talk to me? Most people are going to go, oh, I don't know about that, or can I bring my attorney or whatever? But they can get a court order to compel you to be interviewed and do not have to Mirandize you. The other thing they can do is they can go to school. They can go to the school. They don't even knock on the door. Of course, they walk in. They're free to walk in, and they can say, I need to see Mr. Johnny Smith. He's in the 3rd grade. They will call him out of the 3rd grade, this 8-year-old, take him in a room by himself, and interrogate him about everything. About, do you ever get spanked? Do you ever see your mommy and daddy drink? Do you get yelled at in your home? And they will come up with something, I can promise you, that they can enter a petition.
And they ask leading questions.
Yeah. This latest bill, like I said, I feel like my feet are cemented in stone. On February the 26th, I went and I spoke to the new oversight committee headed by Representative Littleton, and if you ever just like get bored on Saturday night and you want to know what I'm doing, just go to YouTube and type in Connie Reguli, because I post a lot of stuff that I do, and I do have that presentation up there. So, I mean, I talked about that they've got to pay attention to what's going on. I had originally wanted to take about 5 or 6 parents up there, and they wouldn't let me take parents up there because it would not give them time to hear from other stakeholders. Okay? Now, I said in my speech, the stakeholders and the whole committee, yeah, and I'll tell you who they are.
And Jason Potts is on it too.
Yes, and Jared, yeah. So, I said in my speech, the stakeholders are these families and children whose lives you are ruining and affecting. It is not Omni Corporation that makes $52 million a year, Camelot that makes $27 million a year. Foster care is a private industry. Do not forget that. It is as dangerous and as deadly as the militarized private military complex, private prison complex, private mental health complex. Okay, it is financially money driven. So this new bill came up, and I went up there this year, and I took people with me, and there's a few people we visited specifically, but we passed out a bright yellow flyer to every single rep on this particular bill and say, do not vote for it. On March the 14th, it's on the Senate floor, unanimous. Not one senator blinked their eye that this could possibly be unconstitutional. April the 30th.
What was the bill number?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
April 30th, although there had been an amendment through the House committees, there had been an amendment put on the bill that said, unless DCS gives you permission to move, okay, which was of course a ridiculous amendment because they will never give you permission to move when they're in the middle of an investigation, but nevertheless, at least somebody forethought enough, well, maybe DCS will be okay with it. By the time it got to the House floor, of course, it had already passed the Senate floor without an amendment, and so the very first thing they did is put a motion on the floor, take that amendment off, substitute the Senate bill. Unanimous. Not one blink of the eye. I sat in the office of Jeremy Faison, Jason Potts, Terry Weaver, Curtis Johnson,
Carrie Roberts,
Mary Littleton.
Did you talk to Shane Green?
No. But I did watch, and I also pulled off.
What is wrong with Carrie?
I was, yeah.
We need to
And
get
Terry.
that list.
I sat down with Carrie. She totally knows that DCS is wrong. Okay, so, and I have also posted that April 30th House 3-minute little House presentation of the bill, and this guy stands up there, and he's from a county that's on the Kentucky-Tennessee border, and he's like, well, this Elgin Society or something came to me, and they're interested in child welfare, and they said that if DCS and goes to school to talk to a child, that the parents are pulling the kids out of school, and up in my county, then they just go to Kentucky. So it is a misdemeanor if you move them in Tennessee. It is a felony if you cross the state line and take your kid out. Okay, and I'm telling you, of course, now my kids are older, but if they went to school and took out one of my grandkids to talk to them, first thing I'd do is take that kid out and homeschool them. And I've advised people in other states to do that. Okay, so very, very frightening things going on. I have
strictly Davidson County?
No.
This is state.
It's a state.
So it's happening.
And it's, and the people,
And we have a brand new commissioner. She didn't send anybody up there to say, well, maybe. And she's a district attorney from Memphis. She didn't send anybody from DCS up. As a matter of fact, DCS goes in there and lobbies for these kinds of bills.
because
When
that's where they make their money. Every time they take a child out of the family and put them into the system, they make money.
Well, that's wrong.
Eisenhower talked about the military-industrial complex. There's a child/foster care industrial complex. As Republicans, this is where we often mess up. We've been taught our whole Republican lives, if it's private and for-profit, it's good. If it's the private sector, it's good. Oh, it's got to be good. It's a business. Ain't necessarily so, and especially when you're given these private black box companies that you don't know what's going on because they're not publicly traded, they're privately held. So it's not like we can go to go to the shareholder meeting and learn what's really happening. Not that that's where you really go to learn stuff, but not usually. But we're farming out this vital interest of our children's welfare to businesses that are doing it to make money. And again, it's not the marketplace, it's private monopolies, crony capitalism. It's the opposite of what we ought to be before, but we're for it because, it's a private business, it's got to be better to stay. No.
Well, and I say, so it does a couple other things. It removes everything from open records, right?
Yes.
Because now it's a private exchange and not a public exchange. The other thing it does is, for instance, I desperately need to sue a couple of foster parents for the way children were treated in the home. Those foster parents are independent contractors of these multi-million-dollar foster care companies, and so it's unlikely that you can get the foster care company to be responsible and have liability for what the wrongdoing is based on the abuse of foster parents of the children. And then the other thing, and if you don't know this is pretty shattering. In 1997 was the Adoption and Safe Families Act, which was under Clinton. And I will say, and I was an attorney then, at first glance, it seemed to be, maybe this is okay. Because what it did is, at that period of time, we had children lingering in foster care for 10, 12, 15 years. Nothing ever happened to them. So they passed this new bill that said that when the state adopts a child out, the state gets a $10,000 check, okay, a bonus check. It started at $6,000. Now it's about 10. So that's a bonus check, okay? That's above and beyond all your federal funding that you get through Title 4E. So now you have this price tag on the head of every child, that when they put the child in the home of strangers, change their name, change their birth certificate, erase their entire genetic history, that the state gets a bonus money. The Title 4E money is the foster care money. It federally is $9 billion. It's pretty much a dollar for dollar, so it's $18 billion industry at a minimum. So I run the Family Forward Project on Facebook, which is about 12,000 people. I do a lot of lives on it. We coordinate with people all over the country. I have people from all over the country. This is worldwide. This is not just the USA. It's really bad in Great Britain, horrible in Norway. Israel, they're doing it. And we're getting posts and
It's feeding into
Australia.
children and child trafficking also,
Yes,
isn't it?
very much.
Yes, there's parts of it that is very dark and deep, or deep and dark, but even just this trading in children. And then once they get them in foster care, there's a 15-month time clock, okay? So they can keep the kids in foster care for 15 months, no questions asked. This is because the federal money has strings tied to it. One of the strings is that within 15 months, if you've not returned that child, you have to begin termination of parental rights. They put obstacles in front of parents. They say, well, you didn't do it good enough. You got to go to this class over here. You need to go to this counselor. You need to, it's just obstacle after obstacle after obstacle before they will give the children back to the parents. So there's a 15-month time clock that's free ride. They are going to do what they can do to keep those kids in foster care for 15 months. And I want you to think about that. 15 months is a long time in an adult's life. Think of how long 15 months is in the life of a child. A life of a child. And then they'll take an unruly teenager away because a teenager will say, oh, my mom beat me, my mom hit me. And they'll take that even though there's no bruises, no proof, I got one, it's like my mom's dealing drugs, no proof. Put the kid in foster care. The first thing, let's look, 14, 15-year-old, what do they think? Hey, I'm out of there. I beat my mom, right? And then they start realizing this isn't such a good gig after all, right? I don't know these people. They're putting more restrictions on me than my mom even did. My mom wasn't such a bad person after all. And they can't get out. And then once they get a kid that's 16, 17 years old, here's what they tell them. Look, if you just stay in foster care, when you graduate, we'll pay your college, we'll give you $400 a month until you finish, and pay all your health insurance. So why don't you just stay in foster care?
Slavery.
And all this is connected to federal money. And now we have generational effects because they are the kids
But
of
all these hundreds
foster
of
care.
thousands of kids that are now adults that will be starting their own family, what kind of stability can they have?
It just
They've
feeds itself.
destroyed family. They have destroyed family.
Which has always been the goal.
Yeah, I had teenagers. I had lots of fights with my teenagers, but we went to juvenile court, and I told a juvenile court judge though one time, I'm like, look, 10 years from now, when my daughter has a baby or gets married or has a divorce or gets a job and has a fight with her boss, you're not going to care. They're going to come to mama.
Yeah.
So it is absolutely destroying the family. It is so embedded. I am like kicking against everything I can. They're now trying to retaliate against me. I go public. They don't like that. They're trying to silence me.
What judge was it that called you a bitch recently?
Well, that was a DCS attorney.
Oh.
But now because I go public on Facebook, they're trying to sanction me, saying I'm
Do you have a card so I can find you on Facebook?
I don't know if I have a card, but we'll figure it out. I'll put you on my phone here. So that's what I'm fighting. But this is what we've got to pay attention to these laws. I've got to pay attention. So these guys said.
What Terry Lynn had to say when you talked to her afterwards that she voted for this amnesty?
Actually, I talked to her before, so she knew it was coming up. Bless her heart.
No, I love her, but I can't.
Okay, I bless her out then, and I'm gonna go back and talk to her because she told me that she told me about it. I mean, the judge in DeKalb County So I was supposed to go there, and I found out the judge in DeKalb County was speaking at the DeKalb Democrat Reorganization Party. She was the keynote speaker, which they are absolutely prohibited from doing. I filed, and of course they bashed Terry on their website. I called out the judge and filed a complaint on her, and now they're coming after me, on that kind of stuff too.
And
So
it's only a law, so who
What's,
cares?
yeah.
Connie, without having to get into the actual statistics, but what's your take? What's the percentage of children that die in foster care and or are physically or sexually abused?
Okay, well, I can't give you that number, but I can give you something equally disturbing. So I was just pulling up the child fatality last year. In 2018, we had 966 child deaths in Tennessee, and
Just in Tennessee.
Yeah, that's just Tennessee. And so, and there's a whole kind of listing of what the causes are, but I did see a very specific news report that in the Knoxville area, 186 child deaths in 2018, and every child had had some involvement with DCS, and they had missed it. Now, because I'm going to tell you, and I pled this case to the General Assembly as well, DCS does not want damaged kids to put in foster care, okay? Foster parents are just like you and I, right? They got jobs, they got a bachelor's degree in history, they got trying to worry about their retirement account, right? They're not therapists, they're not counselors, they're not pediatricians, they're not MDs, they're not equipped to deal with reactive attachment disorder, PTSD, and mood swings of children who have been traumatized. So they want the lightly burdened kids, okay? They want the kids whose mom missed a doctor's appointment. Medical kidnapping, of course, is a whole other thing. And so they don't take, a lot of times they will not remove these children who are obviously from very damaged situations. And those are the kids that are dying.
And for perspective, that's almost exactly the same number of people in the state of all ages that died in car wrecks from age 0 to 100, and that's just children that died. That's what's stunning and sickening.
And very few, and I had just pulled that up, but only about, of that 966 child deaths, only about 25 of those were auto accidents.
Right.
So well over 900 kids. And it said that there was an increase in drowning, and I forget what the other
Fires.
Yeah, but that's increased over the past 5 years.
I mean,
So
typically, anytime I see where a child has died in a heinous manner, if you backtrack it, you will find out that they were in foster care. I mean, a child that's been put in a dog cage and starved to death, that's foster care. I mean, it's
pretty horrible.
It's beyond horrible. But you're right. I mean, Satan's plan has been all along, whether it was abortion or homosexuality or this, it is to destroy the family, because that is the cornerstone of this Christian nation.
And the injuries. I mean, and the foster care results are bad. I mean, children are more likely to be in prison, not go to college, have children out of wedlock. And not even the deaths, the injuries. I mean, one of the cases I dealt with was a little boy who was about 4 or 5 years old. They took him out of the home. He was not physically abused, but the mother said he's deathly afraid of dogs. Make sure when you take my child, you do not put him in a home where there's a dog. They put him in a home where there was a dog, and you know how dogs are. Dogs sense fear, right? That dog, the kid was watching TV. The dog approached him. His paws, probably sensed the kid's fear and anxiety, bit that child right in the face, tore the side of his face off. So, and I will tell you, out of the 7,800 children, in 7,800 to 8,500, I can never get the exact number, of children in foster care just in the state of Tennessee, 62% of them are under the amorphous, undefined neglect, which can be anything from a dirty house to your mom smokes pot, and only about 30% are because of some type of substance abuse, and of course substance abuse is horrible, but it's not always deadly, or there can be some fixes to it. And only the last 12% are physical and sexual abuse. So of the 8,500 kids that they're taking out of homes or putting in the homes of strangers,
One of them is poverty.
Yes,
I
and
saw a
poverty's
case
huge.
where the family was too poor to raise these children, and they took the children away from them.
and mental health, parents with disabilities, And, you
And
know,
low
I don't mean
IQs.
psycho crazy, I mean educational disabilities. I mean, you know, in one case in Tennessee, a woman lost her child forever because she had a developmental disability. She had a Tennessee group home that she was living in who would not allow children. So they cut off her rights to her child, gave her child to a stranger, and let him adopt him out.
Well, and Haslam's chief of staff, Jim,
Henry.
yeah, he had a business
He was one of
that
the
he
people
actually
profiting.
collected $53 million over 2 years. I looked at the data, so this isn't just somebody's opinion. Where he made $53 million off of these children being taken out of their homes and put into foster care.
Actually, it's better than that. Haslam appointed him as a director at DCS in 2011. From 2011 to 2015, Jim Henry served as the commissioner of DCS while, and he had said he gave up his role as CEO of Omni.
I'm sorry.
And Omni's contract was over $50 million a year. The numbers for that 4-year period is $253 million.
So our tax dollars are funding this heinous attack on these poor children that don't have anybody besides Connie and a handful of other children.
And that's what foster care that ought to be the last resort is really one of the first ones.
Right.
My logic alarm just went off. They took a child away from a poor family, gave it to another family, and then gave that family a check every month
Yes,
to take care of that child.
No, that's the insanity.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and let me and another specific example, and this is a good example. And I know the people that this happened to. You have a young couple, they have, let's say, 3 kids, preschool kids. He's working job to job, week to week, construction, labor, whatever. He loses his job, they get kicked out of their place, they move into a hotel, now they're homeless. Now DCS can take their 3 kids, can put them in foster care, pay the foster parent $1,500 per month per child tax-free, and order the parents to pay child support, and then terminate the parental rights for failure to pay child support. Then the foster parent can adopt those 3 children, continue to get that money until they age out.
And the state gets that commission you're talking
And the
about.
state gets the,
Which is why the state's not against it.
Adopt the children, you still get the
yes,
We need
adoption.
to see if we can't get Carrie and a couple of them to have a meeting with several of us and Connie to talk completely away from a legislative session to get them educated. They can no longer continue to act like they don't know about this.
Adoption.
We've got to pick off 2 or 3 legislators and let's get them educated to the point where they will fight like Connie does.
Adoption entitlement money is now versioning. I mean, you're talking about stealing our Social Security money. So you have Title IV money that's foster care money, and then after they're adopted, you have the adoption entitlement money, which is the continued money that they get even after the adoption, a monthly stipend for every child tax-free. And it is now exceeded the foster care money because it's been going on so long.
They did cut back the refundable nature of the tax credit because that was a real amazing.
That is a drop in the bucket.
But it was an amazing. You're right, but it was an amazing amount of money in and of itself.
It negates any true legitimate adoption. I mean, there is so much filth and
and let me
corruption
tell you
and
this.
everything.
If the foster child is in your home for more than 6 months, you can get adoption tax credit or child tax credit.
Child tax credit.
So you get more government money
No, that's just a couple of $1,000, but again, multiply
per
it out.
child.
Per child, yes.
So you have 4 or 5 kids. I mean, you're talking about bringing in some coins.
And there's all kinds of women in Alaska that have a kid every year just for the $1,000. So
Yeah. So the foster homes in Tennessee many of them have turned into mini group homes. So they build in some of these rural counties. The foster parent gets 4, 5, 6 foster kids. So they're getting somewhere between $4,000 to $8,000 per month, tax-free. They get transportation provided. If they don't have transportation, they get free health care for the kids.
But they wouldn't do that for the parents.
Right.
I mean,
Not
that's the
the
thing
birth
we can't
parents, no,
lose.
we can't
lose
do
sight
that.
of.
And their whole goal is to break the bond between the parent and the child. And I've seen them do it with
Well, the
4-year-olds.
worst case, one of the worst cases was when they went into Vanderbilt 3 years ago and took that 2-day-old baby away from its mother. Because she had at some point tested positive
That's something, yeah.
because she had smoked marijuana at some time. Are you telling me that everybody that's ever smoked marijuana no longer can have children? I mean, and,
Yes,
and
okay,
at the same time,
Yeah.
they're pushing for medical marijuana,
Yeah,
which
it
is
just
a
really makes a lot
gateway
of sense,
to
doesn't it?
legalizing marijuana. I just,
And that's because Tennessee courts have decided that intrautero drug exposure is severe abuse.
It's just
It just is.
severe child abuse
It's
per
se-
se.
Yeah,
Yes.
per se, it's
That's it.
severe child abuse. So, and I've had mothers take one opiate during the.
2-day-old baby not getting to nurse and
Yeah.
not getting to
Yeah, it's
I had the same thing happen with a mom who had taken a couple opiates during her pregnancy. When she goes to the hospital, she's clean, the baby's being clean, the meconium's clean, there's no adverse reactions from the child. They take her baby away at 2 days old, and she never gets that baby returned to her. And they terminate her on severe abuse.
And you know who's really hurt by this and can't in the positions, the people that legitimately do foster care and do a great job with it, the people that legitimately adopt kids that they love, they don't want to be stigmatized by this industry. And that's the only way. It's an industry. It's an industry that's paid for with our tax dollars to do things that almost none of us would approve of if we knew it was going on.
And they're all secret courts. So every time I go on my Facebook Live and start talking about a
Oh, you
case,
can't talk about
they
it.
try to sanction because all those courts are secret. Secret courts. That's horrifying.
This
And
makes
I'm
the
about to-
brown shirts look like nice people.
Yeah.
It makes you think you're not living in the United
It-
States.
Yeah, that's
Well,
the
exactly.
point.
And people don't know this unless they're affected by it
I'm
or
hearing
know
all
some
this for
or
the
close to
first time.
somebody.
I have no idea.
Yeah, didn't know so
Well,
I
much.
have no idea.
What would you say is the percentage of the legitimate adoptions versus the ones that you're dealing with?
Yeah, so like I said, there are, of the kids in foster care, by Tennessee's own stats, you got about 62% neglect, about 30% drug, and about 12 to 15% physical and sexual abuse, which may or may not be substantiated. But, there are situations where parents where they either have sexually assaulted their children or they are addicts that are never going to get out of it and place a child in danger. If you look at just those statistics for removal, though, I would say that it's those 15% maybe, right?
So it's a pretty low percentage of legitimate.
Right. And, there are times, relative placement. The federal law says, because this is all money that has strings on it, and there's a federal outline that you're supposed to follow, the federal law says that you should try to do a relative placement first. I mean, how many families are there that grandparents raise kids, right?
Aunts
Or
and
an aunt and
uncles,
uncle
yes.
raise kids, right? But you maintain some family integrity. And although that's in the federal law, Tennessee sabotages it every time. So you have
Connie
these.
and I came to know about somebody that's actually in Canada, but her niece was in Florida and then went to Alabama. Her mother had died, was that what it was? And she was desperately trying to get out of this foster home because she had a father. But they wouldn't even entertain the idea, and I think there was some other stuff later that came out. But it was just the idea that to see one case like that up close and personal, how the government fought to keep this child away from any family entity, to keep her in, and she sent us a video crying and thanking us for all of our help, and at that point we hadn't even been able to do anything. I said, all I can do is try to pass it to somebody that can. But you just know that if you've seen one case up close and personal like that, you multiply it by the millions.
Yeah. So let me tell you the fix. Okay, I don't like to leave without talking a little bit about the fix. When I first became an attorney, I was a district attorney, prosecuting mostly domestic violence and child abuse. And across the street was a public defender's office, and the twain shall never meet. Right?
That's right.
Every time I went to court, the guy would go to jail. Every time the public defender came to court, he'd go, "He's such a good guy, we can fix him." Right? And so you can never have balance until you have antagonism, right? You can never get to a good balance until you're pulling against each other. What we have with the Department of Children's Services is we have an agency that was created in 1994 for the purposes of family stability, family healing, family reunification is the public policy of the state of Tennessee according to the development of DCS. Over the years, as the finances have changed, that same agency has been provided money to prosecute parents. So you cannot have, oops, ready to set up?
Yeah, I just.
So you cannot have one agency doing prosecuting and services and then put all the money over here, which is basically what's happening. So the agency has to be split. It's time, you've got to split that agency up. We have a great, Tennessee has an agency of developmental disabilities, which actually does a fairly good job. They do services for disabled adults. We have a Department of Mental Health and
Yeah, our
Substance Abuse.
Rosa County person's in charge of that, Brad Turner.
Yeah, we have a Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, right, who helps parents deal with mental health issues and substance abuse. But then DCS is funding prosecuting parents, and that's where all the funding goes. So the agency has to be split. It's actually set to sunset in 2021. But if we don't get to work now,
That's the point.
The bill that, I can't.
John DeBerry,
Well, the bill that was,
which one?
not the one about criminalizing the parents, but.
About terminating DCS?
No, wait a minute.
Okay. All right, well, that's one fix. And then another fix, which actually came, Title IV money, we have now the head in Washington, D.C. Is a man named Jerry Milner. I just went up to a huge conference in Virginia, American Bar Association. He came and spoke. His background is social work, and he also has the mentality that we take too many kids away and we keep them too long. That's the mentality of the federal agency right now. Okay, now to trickle that down is huge because you got this huge bureaucratic industrial situation going on here. So for years, the Title IV money could only be used to fund foster care, and you could only fund services for parents if you had the kid in foster care. Okay, so you couldn't do any preventive services. In 2018, we got the Families First Prevention and Services Act was passed in the omnibus bill, which allows for the Title IV monies for 12 months to be used for preventive services, so you wouldn't have to remove a child. And I would tell you that would take half the kids out of foster care, because a lot of it is families who just need some help. And then they have also said that Title IV money can be used to restructure the funding for parent representation. Because right now, DCS hires probably, 30, 40 attorneys just to prosecute parents. So they have their own prosecution within the agency itself. They're not depending upon the AG's office or the DA. They have their own prosecution staff. So the Title IV money has been restructured. Oh, and then a parent goes into court. They can't afford an attorney. They're entitled by law to have a court-appointed attorney. Tennessee has a horrible structure across the board